They said getting started was the hardest part, but no one told you how hard it is to scale a custom service business. It's time for your team to step up, but your clients want you. Discover how to scale to 7 figures and beyond by freeing up time and getting your team to run whole parts of the company so you can focus on scaling profits. This is the Hands Off CEO with Mandy Ellefson.
Hi, you're listening into the Hands Off CEO podcast with Mandy Ellefson. I have Steve Gordon here as our guest today. He is the CEO of Unstoppable CEO. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, Mandy. How are you? Great to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. Steve and I have known each other for, it was like 3 or 4 years or so.
At least, I think, yeah.
I think we initially got connected because I invited him on to either a podcast or a different show I was doing some years ago. So this is fun to have you on again. And you're launching another book right now. Is that right?
I am. Yeah. We just launched a new book called Podcast Prospecting, which is all about how we approach getting clients for high ticket services.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to tell you guys a little more about Steve Gordon. One of the things I love about Steve Gordon, near and dear to my heart, he generates results for clients. Like they stand by the results. And one of the things that I've seen him over the years do is consistently be innovating his service. And it's been a lot more about what is going to be best for the client versus like what would just be best for him and for his team. And that's something I really respect about Steve, because I'm seeing him continually innovate his business model to be able to really be cutting edge. And that's something that, at Hands Off CEO, we really value. So Steve Gordon is a 2-time entrepreneur, best-selling author of Unstoppable Referrals, 10x Referrals, Half the Effort, and also the Exponential Network Strategy. That's your new book now, right?
No, the new book is Podcast Prospecting.
Oh, I'm sorry. You actually said that. So he's also the host of the Unstoppable CEO podcast and has published over 400 articles on marketing and sales for professional service firms. So his firm, the Unstoppables Agency, helps consultants and digital agencies land great clients by hosting their own podcast and using his proprietary podcast prospecting method. So that's a little bit more about Steve. It's his official bio. So Steve, you're really big on moving towards. You're a marketing consultant. You've grown into become a marketing consultant, and now you're moving into podcasts. So tell me about what got you to this point, and why are you now focusing on podcasting?
Well, it's not because we're in love with podcasts. I do think it's a great new medium, and it is a new medium. I get asked that all the time now. Well, our podcasts, past their prime now. No, we're just getting beginning. This is the early days still. But really, we came to it from a practical point of view. We work with business owners who don't necessarily want to become professional marketers. They want to do what they do. They want to work with their clients. They don't want to spend all their time doing the marketing for their own business. And, for a long time, we did consult with them. We'd give them strategies. We'd lay out the plan, and then they would have to go and implement it. And the thing that we found out, ironically enough, is these very busy business owners didn't have time to go execute the plan. And one of the things that we've discovered about a podcast is it's sort of a Swiss Army knife of marketing. So for a business owner that isn't a great writer, and doesn't feel inspired to sit down and write a 2,000 word, mega blog post on whatever their expertise is, chances are they could probably sit down and have a conversation with you or me about what they're really great at. And the podcast allows them to do what they're already naturally good at doing. And so it really gave us a way to unlock within that business owner the real brilliance that they have, the great ideas that they have that they need to get out to the market, and do it in a way that was really comfortable for them. So that's why we use that tool.
Got it. So then how do you actually use podcasts to generate more business?
Well, so I think it's important for people to understand where a podcast fits in your marketing. And there are really 2 phases in marketing. And the first phase is starting new relationships, and we call that lead generation. And then the second phase is growing and deepening those relationships, creating trust, and staying in those relationships over the long haul, sort of getting attention and holding on to that attention. And the holding on part of that is, drip marketing or nurturing or whatever you want to call it. Well, where the podcast fits in is in that second part. And it is the place where most businesses, frankly, they just fall down. They don't have a great system, because doing that kind of follow-up means creating content. It means trying to have a new idea to be interesting on a regular basis, whether it's once a week or every other week or whatever. And for most business owners, that's just really difficult to do. So the podcast gives them an easy way to do it. All they've got to do is show up and talk, have a conversation like you and I are having, record it, and then it can get used in any number of ways. And so when we work with a client on their marketing, the foundation is the conversation that they're going to have in a podcast, but then it gets repurposed for social media and email marketing, all these other sorts of things. Where it really works to drive new business is with all of the leads that you have opened up a relationship with. And it works by having you show up again and again and again with something interesting, usually because you're interviewing a guest. And we'll talk in a minute about how we use the guests to actually generate leads. But you're showing up with some interesting content, and you're nurturing those relationships. The prospects that you want to do business with are hearing your voice. And so through that magical power of the human voice, they're getting to know you. And it's amazing, Andy. I'll have sales calls and people will, tell me, oh, so-and-so referred me to your podcast, and I've been listening to it, for 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours. Well, imagine getting the opportunity to sit and share ideas one-on-one, because that's how the listener experiences the podcast. We all think of it as this mass medium, but it's really not. It's a one-on-one medium. You're just not there. But it's this one-on-one medium. You're in their ears, and they're hearing your ideas. They're getting to know you and your personality. So by the time they show up in a sales conversation, there's a lot of pre-selling that has happened.
So I love this, because what you're pointing out, I see the sales process as like the three different things. I think you pretty much said the same thing, like the leads, nurturing, and then the sales, the closing, right? Yeah. And I think that many service businesses are just thinking about leads and closing and completely forget this whole middle piece, which is the authority building. So what I'm hearing you say, being able to have these interviews that they're listening to over time and following you, it's building that authority. And the authority, that's what I'm seeing, makes the difference between whether you can charge premium prices or not. And it's the difference between whether you have to be getting on sales calls to convince a prospect to work with you versus whether you're having them apply to work with you. Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, very much so. So, authority is a big part of it. Honestly, to make this really simple, most businesses, most of your competitors aren't doing this anyway. So some of it is just about staying in the game longer than everyone else and persevering. And if you're the one that is there, I'll never forget my first business, which was an engineering consulting company. We did a lot of work for a state agency here in Florida. And we very purposely put our office across the street from the agency's office. We were the closest. They had a pool of consultants that they hired under this contract, about 30 consultants. We got the lion's share of the work because we were across the street. We were the at-hand provider. And when you're publishing information with a media platform, whether it's a podcast or an email newsletter or whatever, you can show up every week. You can be that at-hand provider because you're right there. You're in their world all the time. And I think that's a huge part of it. Now, at the same time, if you do this well, you will build authority. You will build the basis for being able to charge premium prices. And all of that, I think, is really important. One of the things that we've noticed is that when anyone is buying a complex product or service, they really make 3 buying decisions. And you've got to get them to make all 3 of those buying decisions. And if you do your marketing well, and you create authority, you can get them to make the first two most important ones in your favor before you ever meet them. So the first buying decision is they've got to decide that they have a problem and that it's important enough to them to spend money to solve. And those are two really key distinctions, right? But generally they'll make those together. And then the second is they've got to decide, Mandy, that you're the gal for them, or I'm the guy for them. Everybody wants to have somebody where they go, yeah, I got a guy for that, or I got a gal for that. And you want them to make that decision that you're the one they want to work with before you're in a sales conversation with them. And having a media platform like a podcast allows you to get in that position more often than not. And then, of course, the third of those buying decisions is when they actually write you a check. That's the one we all care about, right? But if we do the other two really well, the third one kind of takes care of itself.
I love that. And, with these three buying decisions, what I'm hearing is like these first two, I think that the podcast does a really great job of doing that. And I know this because, I just started working with a client who, also has a podcasting agency, and how he found me is that he binge listened to our entire podcast and he comes up ready, money in hand, like, will you take me as a client? Like, that's the kind of magic that good content marketing does, which is podcasting is a great medium for that.
Yeah, it really is. Well, and one of the things I love about it over other mediums, and I probably came to podcasting a little bit late. Our latest podcast is about 3 years old now. Prior to that, I wrote a daily email to our list every weekday. I wrote over 1,200 emails. I don't recommend anyone do that. It's kind of crazy, but I did, and it was a whole lot of hard work. It didn't work nearly as well as our podcast has worked, which is once a week. And the reason that it didn't work as well was because all of those emails were sort of a stream going by. People would look at it when it showed up in their inbox, but if they subscribed today, they weren't going back to get all of the old ones. They didn't have a way to do that. With a podcast, somebody stumbles upon you or they get referred to you, which really happens more often than you would think. If you've ever been to a networking meeting where everybody went around and shared their favorite podcast, you know how this works. So they find your podcast. They go, oh, this is pretty good. And then you just said the word binge. They binge listen. And that's really the behavior that you want. That's usually a pretty good sign that somebody is plugged in and and is likely to become a client. And so it's great for that. Now, I get asked all the time, well, how do you generate leads with a podcast? And I'll be the first to tell you that podcasts do a terrible job of generating leads. And so the way that we do lead generation is we use the podcast, but we pair it with another tool. We pair it with a book. And for most of our clients, we're helping them create a really great lead generating book. And the book is designed to speak directly to the type of ideal client that you want to attract and speak directly to the really big problem that they're grappling with so that we can get them to raise a hand. And when they raise a hand, some important things about them. Who they are, and what problem is on their mind at the moment. So our book, Podcast Prospecting, the one we've just released, is a great example of that. So right in the title, it already filters for who we want. I want people who, and the subtitle is all about high-ticket sales. So I want people who are selling high-ticket services, who are looking for more clients, and who might be interested in having a podcast. Because if they're selling high-ticket services, looking for clients, but really, really want to do Google Ads, I'm not the right person for them. And so we work with our clients to build a book like that for them. We actually interview them through the chapters of the book. We turn those into podcast episodes, so they have this really great pillar content. And then we have a copywriter go write the book for them. And then that can be used to generate leads with, we do it in a number of ways, but the primary way we do it is we go out and interview strategic guests, people who have already gathered together the audience that this client of ours wants to be in front of. And we interview the guest, we build a relationship with the guest, then we turn around to the guest and say, hey, Mandy, this has been really great. I learned a lot about your business. I was thinking, I bet a lot of people in your network, in your audience, have trouble with XYZ problem, whatever the book is about, whatever problem you solve. And if you've picked that guest strategically, they'll go, yeah, as a matter of fact, they do. And then it's very easy to simply offer, look, I've got this book that solves a problem for them. I'd love to give it to them as a gift from you. Would you be open to doing that? Most of the time, they're perfectly happy to do that because you're giving them a way to give value to the people in their business network or in their audience. And there's no cost to them. There's very little effort involved on their part. And it gives you a way to generate leads. And so just within the first week of launching this book, we eat all of our own dog food. We did it with one of our partners and generated 500 leads and a $30,000 deal within a week of that. And it can work like that. Does it always work like that? No, of course not. But it can work like that very often. And so what we advocate is, you interview people for a podcast weekly. That gives you 52 partner relationships during a year. You have this great tool that you can share through them. And now you've got a very consistent way to generate leads that's not dependent upon social media or Facebook or Google or any of those other things that, where it's outside of your control.
So I think listeners should just go back and listen to everything you just said there, because there was just so much gold. I'm going to have to rephrase a few things that you said, because what I'm hearing about this is, first, have a lead attraction tool that really pre-qualifies whether someone is a good fit for you or not. And you perfect example with your title, the podcast prospecting. It's alliteration there, right?
Yeah, I know. I get you.
And a distinction here that I want to point out to those of you who are listening right now is that joint ventures, doing it the traditional way, it sounds like a really great, brilliant way to, just tap into someone else's list, do a webinar for them, but it's just not that simple. And especially as the market has changed, not many people are willing to put out those webinars, and they're not nearly as effective as they used to be. I know that you do webinars too, and you have your own way of doing it. So excuse me for stepping on your toes here a little bit, because you probably have a different way of doing this that actually does work. But, when someone asks me, hey, will you promote this webinar? I better know the person really well. If they ask me hey, I have this great book and it adds this value, I can flip through this book and say, yep, this is fantastic. I'd love to share that with my audience because it's great value. So I just learned a really great nugget there of just a distinction. I'm really excited to be using this actually. So thanks for sharing that.
Well, good. Yeah. We do webinars really following a very similar approach, using the webinar as, as kind of a packaged piece of information, just like the book is a packaged piece of information. One of the things that we have discovered, though, is that, there are some challenges with webinars. It used to work a lot better than it does. And it used to work better because everybody wasn't doing it. But now, so many of the people who will host a webinar for you want you to reciprocate. And I'm perfectly happy to do that with people that I know well, and that we're both kind of collaborating in that way. But sooner or later, it kind of becomes difficult to keep doing it, because there's only so many webinars you can promote to your network or your audience. You run out of days on the calendar. You have your own things to promote. And with books, what I've found is that it's a benign offer. With webinars, there's usually multiple emails, and they're often a little bit pitchy, trying to get people to register and all of this. You don't have to do all that with a book. If the book has got a really great title that would be of interest to people that are in your network, all you've got to do is send a really simple email, or in some cases, we've shared books with our audience where we're sending it just as a part of our weekly email newsletter. Just at the top, put a little announcement. Hey, in fact, I just did this for one of our mutual colleagues, Michael Zapersky, with his new book. at the top of the email. I said, hey, my friend Michael Zabursky's got a great new book out. You should go check it out. Click here. And a whole lot of people did that, but it wasn't perceived as being salesy or pitchy or pushy. It was me showing up and saying, hey, I've got this great resource. I just thought I'd share it with you. I got love notes back from people because I shared that. So, it's just a different approach.
Sure. And one thing that I'm noticing here too is that you're talking about podcasts and books. What do both things have in common is they're very referable. Mm-hmm. And they're a very low amount of friction to make that referral. People are asking, what are the best books you've been reading right now? What podcasts are you listening to? Nobody's asking, what webinars am I missing right now?
Right. And that's exactly.
There's this perception that you're getting on and, the first 15 minutes is them droning on about themselves. And then, 15, 20 minutes of content, maybe. And then it's like this big sales pitch. And I know that's not how you do your webinars for your clients. And that's why they get great results with them. You're absolutely brilliant at that. I know you've looked over some of our workshops that we've done and given some great feedback. So,
thank you.
But that's just like the typical perception. So you have to be dealing with that perception. So I love that these tools that you have really are overcoming those objections.
Well, it really gives you a way to scale. If you're in a service business, that's one of the most difficult things. You're brilliant at scaling service businesses, Mandy. And one of the ways that you can effectively scale a service business is to package up your knowledge. At the end of the day, you're selling your expertise, you're selling your experience and the knowledge that you've acquired through the years. And it's particularly when we're selling a service that's very hard to demonstrate. This gives you a way through the book, you're kind of capturing it and demonstrating your expertise there, and you're packaging it in a way that is assumed to be authoritative just because of the way that you package it. Some of the books that we create with clients aren't really long books, but the fact that they're packaged that way, they are perceived completely differently than, for example, a white paper or a report or something like that. But the podcast also gives you really amazing opportunities to demonstrate what you do. So, Mandy, I know on the podcast, normally you don't have a lot of guests. It's usually you kind of, sharing your wisdom with your listeners. And it's just a public demonstration of what it would be like to work with you. And for most of the companies that we work with, they will do a combination of solo episodes like that, where they're talking about what they do, and then conversations and interviews where they're building relationships with people that could potentially, massively refer them.
That was actually going to be my next question, the balance. What's the balance between you sharing your content and just floating everyone else's content by? So thanks for answering that.
Well, and I think that's a sliding scale. So if you're at a place right now where you've got a lot of unconverted leads and you've got quality leads in the database, but for whatever reason they're not converting, I might skew it a little bit more towards more solo episodes. And then as you feel like you've gotten all you can out of your existing unconverted leads and you want to really start ramping up lead generation, I might shift it more towards partner interviews, and that's the great thing about it. You're never locked into one format. People get in their mind that, oh, well, if I start a podcast, it's just going to be this one way. Well, it doesn't have to be that. We've successfully adjusted our format. We started off 100% partner interviews, and it worked great. We generated a lot of leads out of that, and we still do those. We now have shifted more towards a 50-50 model. So for every partner interview we do, I do a solo episode. And that has helped our overall conversion rate. So, so you can sort of move it back and forth.
I love that. And I find that that's a good strategy as well. Is, there's so many reasons to have a podcast other than just generating new leads. There's being able to have the ability to connect with anyone you want, really. And there's the ability to interview your clients right on it, right? You probably have that testimonial feature right there.
Yeah, that's really so we have a three-pronged approach to interviews: solo interviews, which we've talked about, partner interviews that we've talked about, and the third is clients. You will get amazing long-form case studies from your clients when you interview them.
So I love that you're doing that, because I think that so many service businesses have a difficult time actually demonstrating proof in their business. And there's so much money left on the table because they're not actually bringing it to the front. These are the kind of results that we're providing for our clients. And I think the reason why they're doing that, one is they get really busy. I'd love to hear what your perspective on this is too. But the other one, I think that they're scared to be that guy who's making these really big claims, because there are other people in the industry, their competitors that are burning clients, making these big outlandish offers, and then they're dealing with picking up the pieces afterwards. Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just that it takes time. For a lot of folks in service businesses, you work on a project basis. And so there's a big rush and a lot of stress to get a project done with a client or an engagement finished. And then you're on to the next one so quickly that a lot of times you don't go back and do the things that you should do to really wrap that project up with that client, even if you're going on to a new project with them. So you don't stop to get testimonials and case studies and things like that. And I honestly think, Mandy, that a lot of people just get used to the fact that they deliver really good results for people. And so it doesn't seem out of the norm for them. It's just sort of what they do. So I think that accounts for some of it. And then some of it is they just don't know how to go about it. And that's one of the reasons that I think doing a few of these sort of case study interviews works so well, because you can sit down with a client, you've got a relationship with them already. You can tell them, look, I want to talk a little bit about how you came to me with this problem. And I just want to talk through the journey that you went on to overcome that problem. You don't have to sit there and sing our praises. If you do, that's great. But I really want to capture something that will help someone who is where you were at the beginning. And so they can hear your story and they can see that the transformation is possible and that the end result that you got that they really want is possible for them. And I think if we sat down and did that, it would be a tremendous service. And when you talk to your clients that way, they can buy into that. It's like, they're joining you on your mission. And I think this is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found the same thing where I've never had a client say, no, I don't want to be on the podcast, right? And you don't have to ask them to sing your praises. You just ask them to share their story. Like that, the way that you formatted, I think is really beneficial. They're going to sing your praises. So you don't have to ask them to. And one of the things I like about that is that it provides really great content, and people can really listen and say, I can relate with this person. I have these same kind of challenges. The other thing I like about it too is that you have a page full of testimonials on your website. You know what? People make those up sometimes. Unfortunately, people just flat out lie and put made up testimonials on their website. So I think that prospects can be looking at them and saying, is that really true? But if you have it linked to a podcast episode, you even take a clip out of it, like there's proof right there.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up. So I have a client that's been with me now for 7 years, and she's phenomenal. And she works with community banks, totally transforms these banks. And when I first started working with her, the big challenge we had was that the transformation was so unbelievable that the testimonials, the kind of performance numbers that she was creating in these banks, other bankers would look at it and they'd go, well, that's just not possible. I mean, literally, they would say that. And it was a big problem because we put these things out there and people would think that we were making it up. And we weren't. It was all absolutely true. You could go look on their public filings and see the numbers. But what we started doing was using the same formula, not in a podcast, but in video form. And we would have my client just interview her clients, the CEOs of these small banks, for 30 or 45 minutes and have them talk about the journey and the transformation. Well, it changed her marketing overnight. We actually would take those, we put all the videos up on her website. We turned it into a little internet TV show. And then we would take the transcripts and have those edited and put into a book. So we're now, I think, on volume 3 of case study books. And so whenever somebody comes into her world, and she gets a really great prospect inquiring about their services, they put those case study books along with the other books that she's written and some other things in a box, and they ship it out to that prospect, because now they've got these fantastic assets that do all the selling for them, and it's indisputable because it's in the words of these other CEOs.
That's absolutely genius. So, and what I'm hearing you say, which you didn't actually say, but that you're pulling all these pieces together to be able to form this very robust marketing system.
Yes.
And it's from the foundation of the podcast, but there's all these different pieces that you're adding in, as I'm assuming, as you're continuing to grow this channel.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's not about doing the podcast. And I think I said this at the beginning. I want to reiterate it. The podcast just gives you a very easy way to capture information, because all you have to do is talk. And you don't have to write anything. You don't have to sit there and labor over your marketing message. If you are already successfully communicating with potential clients one-on-one, then you have all the skills that you need to be really great at marketing. You just need a medium that will work really powerfully for you. And so, yeah, we use the podcast as sort of the hub. I call it the Swiss Army knife of marketing, because we capture it there and then it can be reused. And we've got for our clients, we have a team in place that turns it into email marketing. It turns it into social media, goes on their website. We turn it into a book. We do all kinds of things with it. But we couldn't do that if it required the business owner to do a lot of work. So our promise to our clients is all you have to do is show up and talk. We do the rest. And whether you do this yourself with your internal team, or you hire an outside team, or you work with a firm like ours, as the CEO of the business, your job is just to show up and talk, not to go do the rest of it. I heard a trainer one time talk about Frank Sinatra. And when Frank Sinatra put on a show, he wasn't out front selling the tickets. He wasn't moving the piano. He wasn't sweeping up after the show. Frank Sinatra came in and everything was set up and he sang. And as the CEO, that's your job. Your job is to show up and really do just a few things. Number one, you got to set the vision for the business. 2, you've got to create the messaging. Communicating how you deliver value in the world. And then 3, you've got to create strategic relationships that the business needs. And beyond that, you need a team around you to do everything else.
Well, I love that analogy, the Frank Sinatra analogy. And it's really smart. There's a few things that I am noticing about you and your journey. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. So one of the things that I've noticed is that in the podcasting industry, and I know you're not it's not about the podcast, but I just want to just mention this, because you can go and start a podcast and you can have someone put together this beautiful production and it sounds amazing. And all the technical details, the design, everything down to the T is just beautiful. But they don't know how to monetize it, right? So you're just paying money to have for a production company to make it sound good, right? And then you have, on the other side of it, you have marketing consultants that can tell you how to monetize all sorts of different kinds of marketing channels, but they're not going to implement it for you. They're just going to be this talking head that just tells you, go do this thing, and you're left, okay, how do I do all this? I've got all these other things. We don't even have the capability on our team to do this. And what I love is that I've seen that you've combined the two so that you have this firm that actually delivers real results.
Well, and that we kind of backed into it, as you know. I mean, we used to be
the journey.
Yeah, so we used to be the consultant that you'd go to, and we'd give you the great strategy, and our clients loved that stuff, but they kept coming back saying, "Gosh, I'm just having a really hard time implementing this." And it's funny. I had probably what will turn out to be the most important conversation of my career with one of our longtime clients. he was a consulting client at the time, and he was frustrated because he just couldn't get the things that we had talked about. We set these quarterly goals for him to implement in his marketing, and he couldn't get it done. And he was just hitting a brick wall. And I finally just said, look, if we just did that for you, would it be helpful? And he's like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. So we did it. It was no big deal for us because we had the team, we had the systems, we knew what to do. He was beating his head against a brick wall. But for us, it was really easy. And, it's funny, like we do quarterly calls with all of our clients and plan strategy. And I had him the following week. And I noticed that others were having, similar issues. And I said, well, if we just did that for you, would it be helpful? Like, yeah, it'd be amazing. All of them. So we really right then and there converted all of our consulting clients into, people that were doing their marketing for them. And, and I think that's what most business owners are looking for. Most people got into business because they really want to be in the business that they're in. Yes, they've got to market. Yes, they've got to sell, but they probably don't want to become professional marketers. And, and that's our job. That's what we do.
Well, I want to point out a few things that you're doing right about your business. I hope you don't mind me doing this.
Better than pointing out the ones we're doing wrong, right? So you've moved from being a consultant and saying, this is what you need to do, and providing accountability structure, and, doing all the things that you really should be doing as a good consultant, to actually identifying, like, these are some gaps. Can we just do these for you? And most consultants aren't willing to do that. As you know, they're like, most coaches, consultants are like, no, like, I just, it's not scalable for me. It doesn't really work for me. I don't really want to do that. Really what it comes down to is them saying, I really don't want to take responsibility here. So I'm just going to call that out. And you're definitely not in that camp, and you never have been. And that's why I've really enjoyed our friendship, is because I've seen you really develop into just following the market and where your clients really need support. So I think that's really cool. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you've developed this hands-off business, and we haven't touched about this, but you're definitely a hands-off CEO, because you've been able to effectively get your strategies into a way that is built into a system that your team can actually implement, and that you can do that sustainably and profitably. And the reason why that's important is because if it's not sustainable and profitable for you as a business, what happens is that your clients' results suck. That's what's going on when you're seeing these like up and down type of results from companies. I know you know this, I'm not preaching to you. But for the listeners, that's what's going on here. And this is also why we don't work with solo consultants. We only work with consulting companies that are committed to actually implementing solutions with their clients in some way, actually being responsible for delivering real results. And that's exactly what you're doing, Steve. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important for folks to think about, what part of the business are you really naturally gifted at? So for me, I love the idea part, the strategy part, and I'm still very involved in that with our clients, because that's, if you wake me up, in the morning and ask me, what do I want to do today? That's what I want to do today. I love brainstorming with clients, how we can get them better results. And then the team takes that and is able to implement it. And that's, to me, you want to think about what's your role and where's the line drawn around you? If you think about painting a circle on the floor, and you've got to stand in the circle, and your job is just to sort of hand things across the line to other people to go and do what they're really great at. If you can build a team where you're standing in your circle and they're in their circles, and all you're doing is passing things back and forth, man, you got a great business, and life becomes a lot easier.
Love it. I love it. So, Steve, is there any question I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
Oh my gosh, we could have talked about all sorts of things, I'm sure. I think we really covered it really well. You're a great interviewer, as always.
Well, thank you. Well, Steve, where can people find you?
So, Mandy, what we've done, we've set up a page for your listeners. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, I'd like to give them a copy of my new book, Podcast Prospecting. And that it'll take them deeper into into everything that we talked about today. So it kind of outlines chapter by chapter the whole strategy. You could probably take that book and implement it yourself if you want, and certainly we'd be happy to help if you're looking for help. But if they go to unstoppableceo.net/hands-off-CEO, so unstoppableceo.net/hands-off-CEO, they'll find a link to download the book there. We've got this great new assessment tool called the Inevitable Growth Scorecard, and they can score themselves on where their business development stands in 8 key areas, and it'll help them focus on where they are now and where they need to focus most to improve going forward. And if they'd like to talk with me personally, there's a link on there where they can book on my calendar.
Great offer. Wow. And I did buy your book. I bought it on Amazon. So this is a great opportunity that people are getting it for free. I bought the book, and I'm glad I did.
You should have told me. I would have sent you a book.
I didn't. I know you would have, but I just bought it. So, anyway, I was able to read it in like one evening, actually. So I was able to get through it pretty quickly, which is great. So, and the content is superb as always with all of your content.
Thank you.
So, definitely go back. The link again, unstoppableceo.com/hands-off-CEO.
Unstoppableceo.net/hands-off-CEO. No, that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me on that. Well, and you know what? If anyone listening is saying, you know what, I just want this taken care of, I would highly recommend Steve Gordon and his service. Like I said, I've seen him for years. This is an official endorsement. I do recommend their services, and we send clients over to them or prospects, people that aren't a good fit for us. We send over all the time. So he's definitely their company, someone to definitely learn from. And if it's a good fit, you should definitely look into working with them.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mandy. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, the pleasure's been mine. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hands Off CEO with Mandy Ellefson. If you want to work less and make more, make sure you subscribe and get a new episode every week, and help spread the word by leaving a review.